Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am Aurora. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Today is October 26, 2022, and this is the Level 2 Information, Lesson 3. And in the PDF, it is called Duality and Perception. So Part 1 is about duality and perception, literally how we perceive the world and how that affects our sense of duality. Duality, the definition of that, as I'm speaking about it, is thing versus thing, this versus this. Let me just mute you guys for the sake of the recording, not because I don't love you. I know they've got a little background noise there. Thing versus thing. And we'll talk about how our eyes work on contrast. And we'll also talk about the perspective of being submerged in time. Then we're going to go on to one of the most profound things that I have to share in terms of the flying rainbow lasagna as a shape that exemplifies non-duality, more in the sense of a spiritual aspirant or a solution to suffering. And I have a lot of criticism of all of Earth's surface religious dogmas and traditions. So I'm usually equally insulting to everyone, jokingly about this, never wanting to demean anyone or their deeply held beliefs. I do align strongly with some aspects of Buddhism that talk about reduction of suffering for everything. That is actually where I'm coming from on all of this, especially as it relates to part 2 of this teaching in non-duality. So there's some aspects of the Buddhist philosophy and worldview of going into non-duality. There are aspects that I'm critical of. So I'm critical of some of the spiritual hierarchy and also diminishment of women in their aspirations, in their spiritual aspirations. So that way I'm equally offensive to all Judeo-Christians and Buddhists also. Instead of offensive, I should say, lending my critique from my higher dimensional viewpoint, but the sense of ending suffering for all. So literally, that is why I'm here as Aurora. That's literally why I created the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I did not simply create this as my own personal shortcut. Shortcut is not a word, but my own personal convenience is a better word. Not just my own personal convenience or a way for me to do the things I want to do or achieve the things I want to achieve, or for me as an otherworldly waveform to be able to inhabit a physicality body. It's so much more than that, because once you create a concept like this, and this is the higher dimensional version of this torus shape that we've been learning about in class so much. Once you create something out there, it is, let's call it free range. Like you make a thought, comes out of your mind, here's the lasagna flying off there. And that really means that I am the originator of it, and also that it is here in the world. So when I talk about, I offer it as open source code, quote unquote, for your DNA. None of that means that you're allowed to reach into me or my genetic bank account. Very, very clear, because I've had to clarify this over the recent past. So open source code does not mean like, hi, I'm a computer programmer and I give you some code that you can use for, anything that you want, like, WordPress and things like that are actually open source code for web building. But that doesn't mean you can reach into my computer and look at anything that's on my computer. And it certainly doesn't mean that you can reach into any website that I build using WordPress. No, it means that WordPress is an open source software system that you can utilize without having to pay a fee or a subscribership model, and that you are able to use it for your own projects, but not that you somehow are able to access the totality of the first person that ever created it. That's big. You got it? So this Flying Rainbow Lasagna concept here, I'm the originator of it, and I love to receive recognition of that. And I also offer this freely to you. That means you don't have to pay me $5 a month to be able to do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, or $100 or $1 million. Like I intentionally chose a different way of sharing in coming into this world. Even as I learned about money and commodification, I was like, I want this to be as widely available as possible. But none of that means that everybody gets to get into my energetic bank accounts. Like my bank account is my bank account. My energy field is my energy field. My DNA is my DNA. And this is big because we're working on this teaching today that is about non-duality. Non-duality does not necessarily mean having no personal boundaries. It doesn't necessarily mean, sure, like I have no lock on my front door, come inside of my house. I was joking about this in previous classes. Wear my socks in my underwear. Like, no, like those are my personal socks. Like you're not allowed to put those on in there. Rather, you know, like personalized clothing items. You're not allowed to do that at all. So yeah, no one else is allowed to wear my DNA clothing or anything like that. But what you are allowed to do and invited and encouraged to do on every level is take this as a seed, plant it in your own garden, grow your own flying rainbow lasagna garden, or apply it to your own projects. Use this software to quote unquote build your own website. This is an empowerment tool. So sorry, I have dog hair on my face too. So what we're going to learn about today is it's of course going to expand over the rest of the semester, but how does this relate to non-duality? How does this relate to an end of suffering? How does this relate to the higher dimensional viewpoint? Everything that I share in this class, whenever I say this, I say, gaining an additional dimension means gaining an additional degree of freedom. What does that mean? I'll make my customary like silly face. What does that mean? That means that anytime you get an additional dimension, you get more freedom or more latitude or more, you are in greater capacitation of movement. So I'm going to go back and emphasize this journey of the zeroth dimension quite a lot because I emphasized it last week and I'm going to emphasize it again today. The zeroth dimension into dimensionality, the idea of this little tiny zeroth dimension, which could also be considered analogous to the Big Bang epicenter in this time and place. So I'm not necessarily a proponent of the Big Bang theory and don't agree with everything that the science and academic teaching of today, here now, I don't agree with everything that they teach about. I have a different viewpoint, and my viewpoint comes from an actual place outside of time, but you could think of it as a place that is in the future, but I don't necessarily agree with the Big Bang. And it is something that is a very strong story of cosmology at this point. Cosmology being the narrative structure of how you came into being. So for many people right now, especially people that have been to school and been educated, the sense of the Big Bang is a story or a narrative that gives structure to reality. And it actually does have some reverberation with ancient Hindu culture, the sense of there being a beginning point that is the everythingness of everything that is floating in void. Void is where I am scribbling right now. That means there's nothing there, not even the potential for stuff there yet. And that what ends up happening is this begins to spontaneously expand in concentric circles. So that is the ancient Hindu conception of how reality is created and generated and upheld. You could think of these circles as a giant in-breath. Like as I'm breathing in, my lungs are getting bigger. You can all breathe in with me. I'm getting bigger. My concentric circles are expanding outward, outward, ever outward in this direction. And that, according to the Big Bang model, really represents time. That time begins as this super compressed point that is infinity. I'm drawing the infinity symbol there. And that science describes the spontaneous expansion, calls it a Big Bang because it sees it as an explosion of reality waveforms generating outward. And you could, that was just not a well-drawn waveform, but you could imagine the surface of this as being rippled like the surface of a pond when you throw a pebble in the surface of a pond. So you have these concentric ripples that go outward. And according to that model that, the science objective materialist viewpoint talks about, you've got a bubble of time. Let's draw this better. I get frustrated, you can tell. Here, draw this better. Bubble of time. So this outer edge of the bubble of time would be known as the moment now, or time horizon, okay? And everything here where I'm scribbling is the past. This is all the stuff that has happened from the Big Bang up until the moment now. And then according to this model, actually nothing exists out here. This is void. I'm going to sneeze. Hold on one second. I was going to pause it. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Apologies. There's some dust around here. Back to my whiteboard. where I'm scribbling over here, there's void according to the Big Bang model. And what that means is, it's actually pretty deep. The scientific model doesn't even really formally acknowledge the existence of the future. Oh, let me mute you, not because I don't love you. This will just help everyone to be able to hear the recording clearly. Science does not conventionally in that model recognize the future, but it does, of course, recognize the past. And so there's some imbalance there. Let's go back to the whiteboard and talk about what I was describing to you in many classes, the zeroth dimension, because in case you're not getting it, it's the same exact model. We begin with the zeroth dimension that at a certain point has the most miraculous leap into the next highest dimension. This is what I'm talking about when I say adding an additional dimension means adding an additional degree of freedom. Initially, everything is here. This is the compressed infinity point or the overlapping infinity point of everythingness. And there's no place to go. There's no place to go. There's no need to go. Everything is there. Literally every piece of particle, every piece of energy, every thought, every concept, every person, every consciousness, every possibility, every probability, every timeline, every place where you could go is there. There is literally no place to go anyplace, and there's no need to go anyplace. So that's what the most amazing thing to really ponder about is. And if you have sleepless nights, really ponder about, wow, what would make this zeroth dimension just suddenly start to expand? And it would expand in some other direction just by thinking the thought, what if there was a little piece of me that instead of being over here as a little dot over here, instead was over here as a little dot over here. I should make that a bigger dot because no one on the phone is going to see that. What if? With that thought, there is a cognitive leap. That thought represents the cognitive leap into the next dimension. And it represents an additional degree of freedom. You get +1 degree of freedom because you now can go here and you can go here and you can go here and you can go here instead of literally having 0 degrees of freedom, but 0 degrees of freedom are needed because you exist in the totality of everythingness, which is unity consciousness, which is essentially where we are returning back to. Because even as there is the in-breath, I'm breathing in, I'm expanding, my bubble is expanding outward. Then there's also the contraction. Breathe out with me. I asked everyone to breathe in with me. I didn't ask everyone to breathe out. I hope that you weren't holding your breath that whole time. Breathe out. And that is the coming togetherness. So there's the expansiveness, the sustenance, and the coming togetherness. Here, expand outward. And then breathe back inward. And the coming togetherness. And in that coming togetherness, boom, there is a perfect time symmetry. As everything meets its mirror opposite, it comes together, interacts, all force fields and vectors and forces are canceled or neutralized, and then expand back into their complementary direction. And I showed you that in a previous class too, the mirroring, the jumping of the singularity back and forth between these positions, creating the tori, multiple toruses in a pattern or a crystalline matrix, positive matrix, not like Neo's matrix, not the type of matrix where you're like, I want to get out of the matrix, but a positive matrix, like the one that holds atoms in regularity structures that make a crystalline shape, positive crystalline matrices that you would be bouncing back and forth endlessly between these singularity points as a form of perpetual motion, not as a prison, as I also emphasized and will continue to emphasize and reemphasize, but as a form of longevity and coherence, which is what laser light does, bouncing back and forth between perfectly tuned mirrors that perfectly mirror that beam of light back and forth. And that's what you are doing in becoming an ascended master. Oh, Charlie B has a great question, and I'm going to answer it now while it's relevant. Charlie asks, after an expansion and contraction, is the singularity changed? So the answer is yes, that these are refinements of the overall totality system. So you could think of the singularity here where my hands are coming together as being representative as like one sun or one sun star. and that is a thinker or an emanator in the sky, but really is a analog fractal representative of consciousness itself, emanating time, timelines, and probabilities. All right. So you have the zeroth dimension, that's like the center, epicenter of everything that is emanating all this. Then you have the sun or the stars as their own tiny fractal microcosmic version, although very large in our reality, of doing the same thing. A node that emanates realities. When those realities are emanated outward, it is information being sent outward. Then the information feels the environment. Then that information comes back to the source that emanated it and enlightens the source, gives it more information or illuminates it, or gives it more of a sense of here's what happened as a result of everything that was sent out. Lots of stuff happened. And then here's what happened. Here's the information. And that information in the coming together moment is all integrated into the, let's call it consciousness or awareness or perspective of the emanator to fine tune reality. If it's like, oh, something over here wasn't that good, then what I will do is fine tune my emanation so that next time when I send out these patterns, I can send them out in a slightly different, slightly better, slightly augmented or improved version of reality. And that is what we're really experiencing. So we as individuals are in this refinery of consciousness. It is a refinery of your soul trajectory, a refinery of your personality characteristics, and the events you're experiencing in life. You might have started out with your chakras at a canted angle, hitting toward the membrane of death, or maybe even wibbly wobbly time chakras going back and forth like this. But at a certain point in your journey going up the time spiral here, you align fully with the central core timeline, path of least likelihood, path of ascended mastery. All this is from last week's level 2, or 2 weeks ago, sorry, level 2 presentation. And you make it back to the source as a coherent beam of light, having refined your personality characteristics. The overarching out-breath to in-breath experience is a refinery in the spherical sense of everything that's been sent out. So not just one little direction or vector or time vortex, but the entire spherical arrangement is all converging back into the center, so that way there's the opportunity for rectification or positive transformation, that there are many multiple edits on a timeline, or you could think of it on a movie or the book of your life. Let me drink. This is cloudy electrolyte water. I have a lot of vitamin D in there. Northern Hemisphere people, drink your vitamin D, please. Refinery of consciousness, refinery of characteristics, refinery of the events in reality. So the sun, the stars, and the zeroth dimension, or the source of consciousness itself, are all on journeys of self-discovery, just like you and I are. Spoiler alert, they're you in a higher dimensional state, and exploring what happens when you do certain things in reality, and then having those things be refined by checking out those reality structures and changing and transforming them. That's actually a good segue into me hopping into some aspects from the recorded lesson. You know, I go over the recorded lessons every time before I do my class. This is cognitive leap into the next dimension. We'll return to that, but let me go to what is the viewpoint of time from someone who is not submerged in time. So if this is your eyeball here, I always draw a big exaggerated eyeball. Here is your eyeball here with your iris and your cornea, your pupil, and you are literally looking down a road of time. Like you're looking in this direction, a timeline, which would be like a fourth dimensional French bread, right? And these are the slices of time that are the slices of bread that you can make into like a nice bruschetta or something like that. And every single one of these is separated at the Planck length, which is 10 to the negative 35. It's smaller than a proton, the tiniest slice of French bread, quote unquote, that you can slice and still put some topping on it and call it time. This is the viewpoint that I'm giving to you of information of you are an experiencer, let's just use a color, submerged in time. And that means that when you look down a time tunnel or a timeline, you're going to be looking down like this. If you go back to my face here, many overlapping layers. Just like if you use Photoshop, there's layers. So you're here looking at a road of time that extends in front of you, and you're looking at the next moment is the one that is closest to you, going further and further and further and further and further away, all superimposed in the sense of what will happen at the end of the story. Well, that's down a long road, so that's going to be stretched out all the way over there, and I'm going to be looking at that eventuality through the lens or through the multiple layers of everything that must be experienced, or which much must rather transpire before I can get to that moment that I'm looking at the end of the road. That is very different than the higher dimensional viewpoint. So when you gain an additional degree of freedom, an additional dimension, when you gain an additional dimension, you gain an additional degree of freedom, especially as it relates to perceiving time. So now let's draw, what would it look like from the higher dimensional viewpoint? What does time look like from the higher dimensional viewpoint? What does it look like to me when I'm in my higher dimensional viewpoint? So if this is that, when I'm here submerged in time, my experience is like you, okay? But I fly rainbow lasagna, hop in and out of reality structures, hop in and out, and as I'm hopping in and out, I'm able to see all of these things at once. So I was distracted and trying to do too many things at once. First, let me draw this big grid. Then let me clarify, what is the higher dimensional perspective like, where I'm from as my time outside of time perspective, aurora, a floating collective of consciousness that exists as a pure waveform. Like you're like, Aurora, do you have to draw every single one of those lines? The answer is yes. I'm sometimes very obsessed and I have to draw every single one of these lines. So I want this to look like a grid that is a very large, extensive grid, and you could imagine it containing billions of cells. Every single one of these cells is a moment that is separated at the Planck length, okay? So what you're looking at here as a line that is multiple layers, and each one of these, these are kind of like train, it's like a train, and each one of these are like train tracks, and you have train cars. It's all linear language, all right? But what if you were to do, so like, let's say this is, let's use this example. Let's say this is like an old fashioned film strip, like go to the movies. And some movies now, even in the theater, are digital, but it used to be that there were big giant projectors. Like here's a reel of film, and here's another reel of film, you got it? And then these are all the little tiny pictures that are going by that are flickering past your eye at a particular rate that help you to think that they're actually moving when they're, what it's actually truthful is that they're actually still pictures or static moments. So you've got moment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are like animation cells also. Okay, let's imagine that you're a movie editor, and what you're going to do is cut every single one of these apart. Just choose a better color. Cut every single one of these apart. So just to have one, like for regular film speed, it's 26 frames per second. Just to have 1 second of moving image flash in front of your eyes, you actually need 26 of these, all right? So let's imagine that you're going to take something that exists in a long line, cut it into all of its individual squares, and then transfer those squares over. Transfer every single one of them over, whoops, so that one of these squares over here fits one of these squares over here. And then let's talk about this, the beginning of the movie. Where would the beginning of the movie be? That's over here. That's birth. Time flows through all of these moments, all right? And then you get on over to here. This last frame of the movie is your death, or I also call it your final denouement, the end of the action, or you can also think of it as the culmination. But this is what time looks like or appears like from the higher dimensional viewpoint. When you are submerged in time, you see timelines and time tunnels, and you look down a time road like this. But when you are looking at time from this perspective, the higher dimensional perspective, your, let's say, viewpoint is up here, up above, not looking down the road, but up above the road. And you literally see every single moment of time at once. So if you're looking at a person's life, you see their birth at the very same time of perception. I can't say moment. You perceive their birth and you perceive their death concurrently. And you also perceive every single thing that has happened inside of them concurrently. You see it all at the same time. It is a holistic viewpoint. Let me just drink a little bit more here. And there's an immediacy to it, because all the rest of this requires like doling it out one by one. First this, then this, then this, then this, then this. But over here, there's an immediacy in all at once. Just like if I go back to my face. If you look at my paintings, you see them all at once. You're like, yep, I see that painting. I see it all at once. You don't see like first the pink, then the yellow, then the purple, then the green. No, you see all of those colors at once, okay? So this is what the higher dimensional viewpoint of time is like. And this also speaks to, when I talk about culturally, what it is like for me from the perspective of Aurora, my collective, my time outside of time consciousness. When you see an organism or relate to other creatures, organisms, or aspects of self, you perceive everything all at once. That gives a very, very different level of wisdom and requires different levels of acceptance. In some ways, like you're seeing, if you see a person all at once, because I joke about this, like you can read someone like a book. You see their birth, you see their death, you see everything in between. You see all of their horrible moments, all of their worst moments, then you see all of their triumphs at the same time, because in this painting, you see yellow and you see orange and you see pink all at the same time. So when you perceive a person from the higher dimensional viewpoint, you perceive all of their triumphs, all of their tragedies, everything they're really proud of, everything that they feel like is a horrible mistake. You see it all at once. So it is contextualized. Very, very different than the mental viewpoint and perspective that is achieved when you see things one at a time, because you can get a view, distorted view. You can be like, oh, that person did that and it was a very, very bad, naughty thing, right? Because you don't see the rectification event that then happened immediately afterwards. So when you see from the higher dimensional viewpoint, it actually strengthens the level of love tone. I don't know if you can hear that. Last week, you couldn't really hear everything on my piano. Love tone, the love tone that is the basis for all of this higher dimensional perception and comprehension. You get more love, not less. But it takes a lot of love in order to be able to turn on your higher faculties, to be able to see at that level, to kind of like get that leap into the next highest dimension, and to be able to see the totality of a person's life. And also when you achieve that and you then perceive a person's life all at once, there's an enormous amount of love, blazing compassion at the level of what are considered humanity's greatest teachers, at the level of Christ, at the level of Buddha, at the level of saints and people that are amazing in their human behavior and in their love and acceptance of humanity, because it is a contextualizing of everything that you are. And also that is the viewpoint of divine presence. So it is very, very truthful. Like when you are at the level of divine presence and unity consciousness, you see everything that a soul has ever done. So not only just one life, but many, many, many lives, many, many, many layers. Now let's get to it. You see everything that a soul has ever done on its trajectory. And there's an enormous amount of love and acceptance, because you might see, oh, you did that thing over there in that other dimension. And you might, if you had a limited viewpoint, be like, naughty, naughty, that was the wrong thing to do. You know, like the egocentric deity that would be like, naughty, naughty, I smite you. But the real unity consciousness, divine viewpoint is to say that happened in that parallel dimension. And then this is you over here, and you're either responding to it or learning from it or growing from it or preventing it in some way. Like there becomes a huge amount of interconnectivity that contextualizes something that is seen as a bad or wrong thing. So just know this, and we'll talk about this in terms of getting towards levels of non-duality. This structure represents non-duality. Not all characteristics and not all levels of consciousness are going towards energy. Flying rainbow lasagna as the end result of the oscillation of the singularity and putting the torus time structure in a higher dimensional state. When you do that, what you end up getting is the singularity at energy and the singularity at entropy. Some aspects of characteristics are moving towards energy, longevity, and coherence. They are a song that will continue onward. They are a recipe that lasts. Some are fragmentary or antithetical, or they don't have longevity, or they are not structurally complete. That's a lot of this. Just imagining things like polygons. Is it symmetrical? Does it have structural integrity? If it doesn't, it cannot have longevity. And then what happens to that thing? Does it just kick around aimlessly in the cosmos, like suffering or like stuck someplace, like frozen in agony? No, it goes to entropy, which is a non-suffering state of stillness. Going to emphasize that a lot as I talk in class and as I go through this lesson. Entropy, as I present this concept, first of all, is an immediacy, not a slow journey. Like I'm pressing the brakes and I'm getting like slower and slower and slower and slower. No, and entropy is like an immediacy that happens. It is the complete removal of all energy. That means all intelligence, all volition, all awareness, all motivation, all movement through time. Anything that is energy, even the sustenance of something being in time, it no longer is in time. It is an instantaneous journey to non-being, non-existence. This is, again, not a punishment. This is not to cause suffering. This is a solution that comes from and exists in that level of consciousness that is unity consciousness, that is beyond duality, that is beyond the levels of reward versus punishment. So duality is thing versus thing, and reward versus punishment is literally everything that humanity has been experiencing at this level of the brow chakra, which is highly dualistic, which has to do with a lot of earthly religions, which is why I'm often critical of them. Thing versus thing, heaven versus hell. Get it? If you do the right thing, you go to heaven. If you do the wrong thing, go to hell and you suffer eternally. And I'm being a little bit facetious here, and I hope that nobody is insulted by your deeply held beliefs, but I'm being facetious because that is not a valid premise when we get to higher levels of perception and experience and soul consciousness on its journey. When you really get to those levels, your heart tone becomes blazingly strong. It's like, like, oh, not like screaming in agony, but like, like, I love you, I love you, I love everything. It is a very, very strong acceptance. The naughty thing that was done over here was either healed or fixed or rectified over here, and it also happened because of this thing that was over here. It is really a very strong love tone that comes as a end result of perceiving the complex interconnectedness of everythingness, everything that you have been over time. Spoiler alert, it's all you. It's all you, but not in a very pat, let me get more drink, not in a very pat, like spiritual bypassing way, where you're like, oh, la, 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 it's all you, therefore, like, kill, mutilate, destroy, nothing matters. No, it matters a lot. And please do not kill others and do not mutilate or destroy yourself. And I joke about this too. Kurt Vonnegut wrote this excellent story called Breakfast of Champions, and it's a book too, it's a movie too, that's worth watching. This guy reads a science fiction manuscript and it tells him, like, you're the only real person in the world. And he's like, I am, because he thinks that it's a manual for life. And like, he's like reading life's instruction manual. And he's like, therefore I will like pick up a GUN and go, like destroying people. And I'm like, no, I really don't want that to happen at all. I'm just not saying all of that with all those keywords, because I don't want to have an issue with the platform that I upload my videos on. But he goes not only into self-destruction, he turns violent and destructive towards others. And I always tell everybody, please do not become a Dwayne Hubler if you realize that you're the only person in reality. If you realize that you're God, if you realize that you're really the only thing or being or creature or organism or consciousness that is here, endlessly meeting itself, the healthy, non-pathogenic response to that is, oh, I love and accept myself and everything, not that I want to destroy everything. Big, 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 big. But I always say this, like, hello, spoiler alert, you're kissing yourself in the mirror and you're meeting yourself. And that is what time symmetry is. Constantly meeting yourself, constantly meeting yourself from these different directives and vectors. You're the everythingness that's in the middle. You're the point that is at the center of the singularity, that is the zeroth dimension, that is the beginning of the Big Bang, and you're expanding outward. And then you're all of the stuff that expanded outward. And then you make the journey back and you meet everything. And you're like, that was me, that was you, that was me, that was you. I stabbed you in the face. That's right, that was me, that was you, coming together. But not that it's okay to do anything like that. So there is a gulf, a very large chasm between the highly abstruse conceptual levels of everythingness and unity consciousness. And then where the rubber meets the road, the boots on the ground experience of actually being in reality, because there are many particles, many creatures, many organisms, many thought fragments, and unhealed emotional aspects of self that don't yet recognize that everything is them. And they go around, yes, killing, mutilating, and destroying things. You can tell by my face, I'm like horrified by it, because they don't yet know, they are not yet at that level of unity consciousness. And it is not your job to present yourself to be like kill, mutilate, destroy me, like so that you can learn your lessons of what unity consciousness is. Like, no, please do not be around those particles of self that are immature at that level. Please don't be around them if they're going to be violent or pathogenic. And also there are some aspects of self that are heading towards entropy. So rewinding now out of my comical lightheartedness, talking about psychopathology, and back into a more grounded and serious presentation of the concept of entropy. Entropy is the solution to ending suffering. And it is why I created the Flying Rainbow Lasagna spontaneously. And it is why I am here in reality. And I created this Flying Rainbow Lasagna spontaneously. And it could have just been like, oops, like I'll just toss that over my shoulder and then kind of like, see ya, like I'm off on my cosmic journey. And I said, no, I do not want to do that, because it can take humanity and people everywhere a very, very long time to really comprehend what this concept is and then apply it effectively to their lives and to their soul's journey. That would be more suffering. Like if it took 500 or 5,000 years, you'd be like, okay, like they finally figured out the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. That's great. Like I could have told them in 5 minutes. That's why I'm here, because I created this, and then it is definitely my intention to reduce suffering. So I'm like, I'm actually going to go there or be there and tell everybody all about this. But again, it was a very long journey, because I thought initially I would be done in 2003. And I thought initially all I needed to do was make a sculpture. Wait, this is the sculpture that I made. This is such a cute story. I made this sculpture. It's made out of like Sculpey polymer clay. And that was after like doing many, many notebooks. P.S. So I have those images from my notebooks that are available as that deck of cards that my Kickstarter didn't come through, but it's on my Etsy website. So I'll keep the link to that if anybody wants that, because you can see me going into learning and drawing everything out to be able to come to the moment when I actually was like, I'm going to get clay and put it together. And so I did a lot first with drawings and then cutting out paper. And then I put it all together as clay like this and baked it in the oven. And you can see like the ridges along there. That's where I had it kind of like on the part in the oven, like where you put your toast or whatever. And yes, and I thought like, that's it. The lasagna comes out of the oven. Like I've completed my mission. And I'm being facetious and lighthearted towards myself, because I look at myself and my own life as a whole big giant movie laid out on an enormous editing table where I see every single moment at once. And I see that, and I can look at it with lighthearted humor, but you can also look at it with compassionate poignancy of like, oh, like that at 2003, and it is now almost 2023. It's almost 20 years later. It's 19 years. Be like thinking like that is done. It's not done, because humanity didn't get it. Not that there's anything wrong with you, but because I needed to explain and describe things more fully, because it was not in the fullness of being that it's not enough for me just to make a sculpture and then just be like, okay, guys, here's the sculpture, because then I have to actually articulate more about it. And then I have to articulate in the cultural language and using analogies that make it accessible to and digestible to or comprehensible to the people that are here in this time place. And then after doing that, then it's like, well, like, what if I told 5 people? Like, is that enough? Gonna have to tell more people. So it's been an ever expanding journey or mission, ever, increasing mission of like how to get people to know about this. But the whole idea about this is that it reduces suffering. So this shape does many different things. It adds an additional dimension and adds an additional degree of freedom. You're changing and transforming your energy field from this into this. That's what that painting is. Earth's magnetosphere is this. It's changing into this. That is what pole shift is this time around, not catastrophe, not crustal displacement, not everything bad that has ever happened to everybody and traumatized everybody and kind of left you crashed down here in the wreckage. This is a completely different type of energy field transformation from toroidal into flying rainbow lasagna, which you could call it a hyper-torus or higher dimensional torus shape. And this is achieved by taking this shape and the singularity convergence point that's at the center and making it jump really, really, really fast between two position points. That's actually a good segue into me showing you this image, but I also want to finish up with time field stuff, the movie of your life. So first, let me go to this image, then go back to the whiteboard. Drew this image specifically for class so that I could tell you about this. You have at the top a torus over here, and where I scribbled, there's the singularity, and then you have a torus in cross-section at the bottom, and they are superimposed, or they both exist at the same moment. And what's happening is the singularity is here, and it is also here, and it is transiting between those two places by using a jumping back and forth or interdimensional bridge. And as it jumps, like as it is jumping down in this direction, it leaves that swoop in its wake. And then as it jumps in this direction, it leaves that swoop in its wake. And the flying rainbow lasagna that I have over here is the end result of 8 of those swooping motions, like on Sesame Street. Let's count together, everyone. Here, so you can see on the camera. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so we have 8 flanges or petal shapes in this particular lasagna. But please comprehend that lasagna can really take on an infinite level of complexity in its formfulness. It is a waveform oscillation. So this itself is vibrating back and forth, even as it is twisting and twirling around, even as it is at times tumbling through time like this. And also you can have oscillations up and down, side to side, in and out. You can also have more than 8. You can have this doing multiple different combinations. So this is a diagrammatical simplification to be able to get across the concept to you, where you're like, well, you know something, if I take that to its logical conclusion, then it can end up looking even more and more and more complex. And that is correct. So this could be stellated, kind of points sticking out in all of these different directions. And it can have many, many, many multiple flanges as it is doing this. Let's go back to complete this thought. I know I do nonlinear teaching. You guys are really great. Everybody gets it anyway, even though I'm nonlinear. This grid over here, this grid represents one version of the Choose Your Own Adventure novel of your life, but it's like one edit of the term paper. Every time you make a different choice, let's get a different color here, you end up with a different layer of reality. So that movie, seeing you from birth to death, in this particular movie of your life, is just one edit of the movie. And let's say here, you make a slightly different choice. You have coffee instead of tea in the morning. Everything changes. So then let's make a cascade event. I don't know if you can see this on your screen. Good. Now, every single one of the moments of your life changes as a result of that. There's a cascade of causality factors. Causality means this thing happened because of this thing. And then that's just one version. Oops, I did move that thing. That's one updated version. But of course, in another level of time, you made a slightly different decision. Let's say on this day over here where I'm scribbling, you made a different choice. You decided to have eggs instead of cereal, and then you created a new reality structure that has all of these different slices of time that are slightly different and come from a slightly different angle or represent a slightly different viewpoint of the possibilities of who you are and what you could have experienced just from that one decision-making node. So these layers, I'm drawing them as squares that are overlapping into kind of box shapes, but please understand that that is only a convention, that they actually are spheres, and that, I'm drawing like curvatures here. So all of these are spheres, and that this represents layers of your body that are part of your chakra system, because all of these are made out of circles and spheres and curvilinear lines. But I keep drawing these things, timelines, as simplified lines and grids, because I think it's a little bit easier to perceive. And this is when you, from the higher dimensional viewpoint, look at a person, you don't just look at one layer. It's like Photoshop. I'm not just looking at one layer. I'm not just looking at the black layer of who you are. I'm actually looking at, just use a neutral color here, the totality of all of these layers of reality put together. Every single possibility structure of who you can ever be, it comes together. So this is also part of the recipe of you. And this also speaks to my teaching about becoming an ascended master. So when you're becoming an ascended master, you have that time vortex and you're trying to get your ship of consciousness to be going not towards the membrane of death, but to refine your consciousness until you are going all the way up and out like a laser beam, outward through this level of reality. And all of the stuff that's happening on the periphery is actually not random or disposable. Those are all versions of time that were not successful, but they end up as layers. And when you add up all the layers of your being, all of those layers add up to your ascended mastery. This is what it's like when you look at the rainbow. So the rainbow happens because you have a beam of primary light that is white, that hits something like a crystal, a prismatic crystal, that then refracts, splits up all of that light into its recipe of what it is. That's what you see here. That's the recipe. And that's the proportions in the recipe too, of the cake of you. And then when you are putting together that recipe, you take this much red and this much orange, blah, 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 up to a dash of vanilla, which is this much violet. And then you put it all together and you get the cake of you. All right. When you are becoming an ascended master, you take all of these layers of reality. In my drawing that I just did, the black grid, the red grid, the green grid, the everything grid, the every layer of reality that you've ever experienced grid in Photoshop of time, and you put it all together, and all of that adds up to the recipe of you. So again, these aren't random or unnecessary or arbitrary is the word. These are not mere arbitrary peripheralities. The peripheral realities, whatever I call them, they are not merely random or disposable or arbitrary. They actually exist as part of the totality of time structure. And that also can help you to comprehend, like, why do bad things happen to good people? Why did that crap happen to me? Why did that crap happen on the peripheral timeline? Why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to circulate through that in order to get to here, who I am and where I am and what I'm experiencing now? And the answer to a great deal, many of those existential questions comes down to that was part of the recipe of you, and that those were non-eternal, non-successful essays or attempts up the mountain from base camp, and that you only summited and got to the top of the mountain on this particular path of least likelihood, which is your path of ascended mastery, which, by the way, when you're on that path and you've got that blazing love, compassion, you've got it for yourself, and you look at your life in that way, and you look at not only your life, like looking over your shoulder, like, oh, I had to go through that, I had to go through that, and I had to go through that, and I had to go through that, and all of that unpleasant stuff becomes contextualized from this higher dimensional viewpoint. But, and also every single incarnation, let's say, because I paused at that, every single incarnation that you've ever experienced in terms of your soul journey, from being a human to being another creature to living on earth to living somewhere else, all of that stuff becomes contextualized. So you not only see the movie of your life as a one-faced, two-armed, two-legged human on planet Earth, but you see all of the layers and the recipes of you where you have been many multiple different types of organisms across time. Because believe me, you have lived as a flatworm, you have lived as a mycelial goo, you've lived as a particle of light, you've lived as a gaseous being on Jupiter. Let me drink some more. You've lived or are living all of those concurrent existences, and you've lived a physical, material, multicellular, solidified life here on Earth, on a rocky, materialist planet, not a gaseous planet. And all of this becomes part of the recipe of you, which actually it becomes part of the recipe of you as unity consciousness and divine God consciousness. Brief pause. Rewind, go back to the beginning. Let's talk about duality. Why are we so stuck in duality? It's not just that we're at this cosmic level of maturity, moving up the chakra system and getting to layers of the brow chakra, which is Christ chakra, non-denominational Christ chakra. No offense to Christians of the Christian dogmatic religion of Earth's surface, which has its own levels of beauty and also own levels of deserving of criticism. But the Christ consciousness level is here at your brow, and it's not the end of the journey. So activating this chakra and being able to see beyond the physicality structures of your eyes is one step on the journey towards unity consciousness and transcending duality and thing versus thing, but it's not the end of the journey, because you still have to get to the crown. You still have to get to the level of plugging directly into divine or God consciousness. And then you would say that that is the transcendence moment. So why are we so mired in duality? It's not just the level of cosmic or spiritual maturity that humanity is moving through right now. It is also part of the basic architecture of your eyesight and how you perceive the world. So let's just speak briefly about how your eyesight works in your retina of your body. Thing versus thing is how you see. So in the shape of my face right now, you see this is the shape of my face that is lit by the sun that's coming in through the side of the window over there, right? This is like the highlight if you were a painter. And then over here where I'm pointing my pen, this is dark. This is my hair and it's in shadow. And the whole idea of what your eyes are doing with their photoreceptor cells is they're doing contrast. Light versus shadow creates an edge. And then your eye perceives this edge and says, wait, there's a thing there. There's a thing there. There's a thing that exists. And then there's a thing that's a darkness or a void or a shadow that highlights the presence of that thing. And of course, you didn't come here knowing how your eyesight works. Had to learn that. Most human infants learn that in their human development, when they're like under 1 year old. And of course, some people have like eyesight irregularities and aren't, normative, but please, you're loved and exactly the way you're supposed to be too. But this is the way that most human beings' eyes and eyesight and perception work. So when you first come here, you're looking at the world and you're like, random shapes, random things are happening. I don't know what is going on, and you can't really build a picture of the world. And what happens is you begin to create like the structural quote unquote software system or software application that makes sense out of the seemingly previous to that disjointed or random stimuli that are coming into your eyes and your eyesight. Okay, so your brain, your occipital lobe, your system of perception starts to develop a way of making sense of all of the flashes of color and light and different degrees of color and light that you see around you. And then at a certain point it clicks and you're like, there's a light part here and there's a dark part here. I'm looking at a face. This is an aha moment, all right? This has to do with photoreceptors in your eyes. So some of this is your wiring of the way that you have wired your occipital lobe, and then some of this is photoreceptors in your eyes. I go into this in depth in the recorded homework lesson. I'm going to go over it fast here, erasing away to make some room for us, just so that you get a sense of this. On the back of your eyes, you've got your retina, and your retina has cells. And let's say let's do the better color. I always use blue because it is the color of your third eye chakra. These are retina cells. And the way that they work is they make little spires. When a retina cell is stimulated, it jumps upward. So now let's say here's a beam of light or a particle of light that comes in through your eye hole and stimulates this particular retina cell. What happens is it jumps upward, gets taller than the rest of the cells, literally stands up above them. And what you begin to perceive and calculate with your mind/brain/system of perception is you calculate the difference between this and this. Like, oh, there's the difference here. There's a difference between these guys are like, I didn't feel anything. Hey, did you feel anything? No, I didn't feel anything. Hey, did you feel anything? No, I didn't feel anything. But this guy over here is jumping up. He's like, I felt something. There's something out there. And what your brain does is create a whole amazing complex pattern of perception of the world around you based upon that difference. This guy that's standing up in class saying, I see, and this guy that's over here that's like, nope, I didn't see anything. There's nothing there. So that is duality. That is duality. That is programmed or built in or baked in to the basic hardware of your eyesight. And mostly, again, people are different and unique. And I celebrate everybody that has visual differences or limitations. Mostly humans perceive the world with using eyesight as the primary sense, all right? So mostly it is through looking at the world through contrast on the wall. There's the wall, which is white. There's the painting, which is dark. Thing versus thing. And then mostly humans have, so just the eyesight apparatus with your retinas, receptor cells standing up or sitting back, and then also binocular vision, two-eyed humans. And humans are not like insects. Insects have a lens that is a lens array that gives them a multifaceted viewpoint of reality, where they might have 100 or 1,000 tiny images that their brain then knits together into a holistic viewpoint of what their environment looks like. Their ocular centers or visual centers of like a bee or a dragonfly are amazing. Even though they are tiny little creatures, their processing power in the little tiny brain that they've got is enormous, because dragonflies actually see in 360 degrees all around them, and they see these multifaceted views of reality. And then they've got the processing power as they're flying around through reality to take all of those static images and weave it all together into a very complex viewpoint of what the world looks like. So humans are doing something on a similar level, just with your two eyes. You have eye one and eye two, and they're separated by a small amount of space, and they converge on an object, and they look at that object. And what your brain and your system of perception does is it does a calculation again of the viewpoint of reality from this and the viewpoint of reality from this. It compares two things. That's what duality is. Thing one versus thing two, viewpoint one versus viewpoint two, the concept of black versus white. These are all going to be human concepts that I'm bringing up here. Hot versus cold, because even though we know that heat exists in a spectrum, so also color exists in a spectrum, but there are conventions that have been created in terms of hot versus cold, light versus dark, white versus black, that is part of human linguistics, the way that you describe the world, and the way that people, even good versus evil. Get it? You get it? So I don't want to add to more duality when I talk about energy and entropy. What I'm actually trying to do is to help everyone get into, make that miraculous cognitive leap from duality perception into non-duality perception, where you are able to perceive in a holistic whole and sense that some aspects of consciousness are going to enter energy and some are going to entropy. So these are not like, again, like light versus dark, heaven versus hell. I want to be really, really clear on that. So the heaven versus hell theological paradigm is definitely very much one of punishment and reward. This is behavioral control. And this also has to do with training. Like if you want to train an animal, like train a dog, train a horse, when they do something good, you give them a morsel. When they do something bad, you hit them and tell them that they are bad. And that's the sense of behavioral training. And that might be appropriate for a certain level of spiritual maturity or development, even though I do not condone violence or pain or training through pain, not for horses, not for dogs, not for humans, not for any of us, because I think that you learn best through positive reinforcement. So the way that I would structure things is to say, yeah, when you do something positive that brings you to longevity and coherence, ascended mastery, you're rewarded. And you are rewarded with, like a good feeling. It's immediate. and it is long lasting, like your rewards don't melt away. And that's much more powerful than living in fear, because it's kind of like, oh no, like if I step in the wrong direction, I'm cringing. You can tell, like, oh no, I better not think that thought or do that thing or be that person, because if I do, I'm going to get a whack, which is the idea of the God, the egocentric God or deity that will smite you if you do or say the wrong thing, or that might damn you to hell, make you be separated from God's presence forever, in the sense of an eternal punishment. That is all really, really destructive thought forms. And I think that qualifies as a type of religious flavored traumatization of putting fear into humans, programming them to be afraid of following their natural patterns. Because what you should do is you should be going through the time field of your life. You should be going through this probability field and be like, well, let's explore. Let's see what happens if I do this. And let's see what happens if I do this. And if I do this, you shouldn't be like, oh no, I'm going to get smitten. I'm going to, something bad is going to happen. What you should do is go through the time field, be like, let's see how I can navigate the time field, be like, wow, like when I did that thing there and went on that timeline, I got huge rewards. Let's see if I can do something like that again. Let's take that as a template for experience and magnify that, experiment, and do it again and again and again, and then I will be able to experience more and more and more rewards. That is the positive motivation, as opposed to pleasure pain paradigm, which is dualistic, as opposed to the pure pain paradigm, because there is also that which exists, which I think is a lot of what our planet's suffering through right now, which is just no reward, only suffering. You know what I mean? So like, you never get a positive. I don't know if you've ever had this experience with a teacher, family member, or any kind of critical person in your life, but like, okay, you're like playing the piano, mean piano teacher, you're playing the piano, you're doing beautifully, they just stand there saying nothing, but you hit one wrong note, they're like, one wrong note, whack. Only pain, no pleasure. Because when you're doing great, they should be like, awesome, 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 keep going, because it helps you to keep going, as opposed to just be like, la, 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 I'm doing great, but not receiving any positive rewards. And then my pinky slips, I hit a wrong note, and then whack, you're doing horrible. And you hear all about it. And it's a huge trauma and a burden for you to carry forever. No, that's not what we want. So that is an artificially imposed system that is completely out of balance. It's not even dualistic. That's just whatever, completely out of balance. Then there is a dualistic system, which is pleasure pain paradigm. Then there is what I talk about, which is the reward paradigm, which again, I wouldn't say that's out of balance, but I would say that's based in love, because you don't actually learn very well when you're cringing from the possible repercussions of your choices. It is a behavioral inhibitor. So all of those things are really just behavioral control mechanisms. The higher dimensional viewpoint beyond duality is based in love, and love means acceptance. Love really means something more than the romantic attraction or hugging, or even the way I love my dog or something like that. It's really more total acceptance. It's like, oh, like that was done. That's a thing that happened. And then that's not a desirable thing that happened. And then this is what happens next. Like, it's a very, very, very different way of looking at the world. So back to my more serious explanation of what is entropy. This entropy exists as a form of non-duality and balance to the energy state. The energy state being that totally contracted level of infinity that contains everything in potential. It does not necessarily mean that everything should or shall be manifested outward as materialized experience. We are having this level of refinery right now. Not all characteristics should be in existence. Not all behavior patterns, not all songs. That song is beautiful music. Here's a non-song. That is not beautiful music. It should not be in existence. So I also spoke to you about this in a previous lesson. If you are alive, put your shoulders back. Please congratulate yourself, because you passed the audition just for being alive, which means that to a certain extent, you are coherent enough, and your unrefined basic personality characteristics are worthy enough to come into this level of refinery and then move on that journey of becoming totally refined as an ascended master. That's basically what it is when you are nourishing food. Like nourishing food, like a beautiful apple or something like that, is a certain percentage light, consciousness, pure energy, whatever we'll call it, 59% pure light, and then it's 41% bulk, filler, stuff that gets left behind. I'll get to that question 1 minute. The stuff that gets left behind, you know what happens. Food goes in one end, it comes at the other end, but I don't want you to think of it as something that is worthless, because that is, it's undigested matter, it's fiber, it's bulk, it's stuff that your body doesn't need or doesn't use, and that becomes fertilizer for the ground. But the whole point is that of food, not 100% of it is light, intelligence, or data. Until we become light eaters again, then you only have light coming inside of you, so there is nothing that's extra. You get it? You get, guys, you get why I'm like, not the pleasure pain paradigm, just the pleasure paradigm, because that's where I come from. I come from a world of pure light, where there's only light, where there's only information, there's not non-information, there's not nonsense, there's only sense, there's not non-being, there's only being. And I've been here in this world where it's like, there's a lot of nonsense and a lot of non-being around here. And that is part of my journey of why I'm here. Why have I been here for so many years? I think a lot of it has also been for me to comprehend the embedded experience of being embodied and being surrounded by a lot of things that aren't actually supposed to exist, and being able to offer effective behavioral and perception tools in response to the stuff that's not actually supposed to exist. Because when you eat an apple, there's a certain amount of light that's in there that does come from the sun and the stars. Then there's a certain amount of stuff in there that is not light. That's not light, but it comes inside of you along with all the rest of the stuff. And then you have to get rid of the stuff that is not light. In the larger refinery of consciousness, what do we do with the stuff that is not light, that is not coherent, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't have longevity or bring the cosmos to longevity, that is not a desirable set of personality characteristics? Where does it go? According to the Christian theological doctrine and some other forms of religion, it goes to hell and it suffers eternally. And I do not advocate for that at all. And I'm not going to be lighthearted now, I'm going to be totally serious. I advocate for all of those forms of consciousness and entities or beings to actually go into a state of non-being. And that none of this is meant as a type of punishment. It's not meant to add to suffering. What is suffering really? What suffering really is, rather, is when you're an entity or an organism or an organization that does not have enough of what it needs just by naturally tuning into the sun and the stars, and feels some requirement or necessity to parasite off of others, eat others, lie, manipulate, steal, or do something that otherwise is not is antithetical to cosmic law, that is against unity consciousness. Because if unity consciousness and cosmic law go hand in hand, if that's me, how do I want to treat me? Do I want to chop off my own arm and then eat my own arm to sustain me here? Like, no, I don't want to do that. So the real suffering is any organism or organization, grouping of consciousnesses or entities or organisms that cannot sustain itself. Can't sustain itself just on light, can't sustain itself just on pure consciousness, can't sustain itself just on divine presence, and then needs to get something from someone or somewhere. That is a great state of suffering. That literally is the mindset that has been imposed upon humanity for millennia. I give a huge hat tip to the work of Carlos Castaneda, which Don Juan is a composite character in those books, native Central American shaman who speaks about the flyer's mind, that there has been a mind invader in humanity for a very long amount of time. Your mind is not your own. The flyers gave you your mind. I think it's the active side of infinity. And I always quote this in the class that it's relevant to, and it's quoted in the PDF. So don't worry, it's coming up in class. I'm giving you a little bit of a preview. The flyer's mind, that it's not your own mind. When you're worried about having enough food or having enough money or having enough anything that you need, it's really not you, because the real you is a light eater that is totally sustained by divine presence, totally sustained by a flow of light, which is energy, which is information, which is timelines, which is possibilities coming into you at exactly the right rate, where you're like, yep, I've got enough energy, I've got enough time, I'm being sustained, I'm in existence, and I'm going to have more. And there's more. It's coming. It's coming. It's all coming. It's all coming. It's a very, very different level of being than the striving and machinations and motivation and manipulation. Like, I got to get out there and I got to get some money, or I got to get some food, or like all of that has been put into us as an overlay to our natural behavior, which is much more receptive and just in receiving mode, just receiving in gratitude. Whatever you need will be fulfilled and will come to you, but that's in a pristine system. In a pristine system, if you have a need for 100 units of ideas or energy, 100 units of ideas or energy flow to you because there's nothing that's siphoning anything off. But here we have 100 units of energy flowing to us. 99 of those units are being siphoned off, leaving you with a paltry 1 unit of energy with which to sustain yourself. And then you're like looking around, you're like, okay, I need to get 99 units of energy from somewhere out there. I'm going to eat an apple. And not only an apple, but a chicken and some avocados. And I'm trying to think about what I ate for lunch. A lot of good stuff. You're going to eat a lot of good stuff to get energy from other organisms, because guess what? Your own light and your own, everything that's been earmarked for you has been misappropriated or hijacked is another way of thinking about it. And sadly enough, Earth's ascension energies have not only been inhibited, like blocked out, but they've also been misappropriated and hijacked. I have a song called You Should Have Ascended by Now, not to be like naughty, naughty on you, but more to remind you that in a pristine system, you would already be at this level of being a pure light eater, because there would be nothing that would be inhibiting your growth, your self-realization, and your self-remembrance as God, feeding light into you and receiving it all as God. There would be nothing to prevent you from having that amazing aha moment, but that's been held off because I jokingly say someone else is getting high on your stash, so that they've been taking your ascension energies and using it for the sustenance of their own consciousness, and then trying to stay in existence when those consciousnesses actually should be fading away. So that is more of what when I talk about what do good waffles do, they stick together. What do good pooties do? They fade away. They go into a non-coherence. They do not stick together. They go directly into a state of pure entropy or non-being, which is not suffering. It is not striving. It is not motivation. It is not need. It is not requirement. And it is not even self-awareness. Because if you were aware and you were like, I don't exist, but I'm just putting this down. I don't exist, but I want to exist somehow. Like, it's not like that. It's not like sitting around and being like, everybody else can, like everybody else. I'm a little kid. Everybody else has ice cream. Like, they've all got ice cream, but I don't have ice cream. It's not like that at all. It is literally paradise. Entropy in the model that I propose is literally paradise for these thought entities that have been suffering in semi-existence for what could be counted as millennia, but sometimes even longer. They have machinated huge systems to be able to siphon energy off to sustain themselves, but it's never enough, and their systems are very inefficient, like friction that bleeds things off. So an inefficient system, and it requires ever greater amounts of energy to sustain it. And this is what has been causing an enormous amount of suffering in the world that you and I experience, where you would have already been ascended by now, if not but for the organizations and organisms that are taking the energy and consciousness and possibilities that were earmarked for you and misappropriating it into their own levels of reality to sustain themselves, which is actually an act of sustaining themselves in suffering. So I continually speak about this and offer this to the world, that it is an end to suffering for those fragmented entities or energy forms or consciousness forms or unresolved emotional states to go into a peaceful, restful, resting state, which I haven't said this yet, which is really important, is unity consciousness. So unity consciousness means, sorry about the little notifications that are coming in, being in the divine presence, being home, that source that emanated you into reality. If there is nothing to eat for these consciousness creatures or organisms or organizations, they're like, what do we do? There's nothing to eat. There's nothing to sustain us. We can't get back to the energized state in order to go in order to quote unquote go back home from the same pathway the way that you and I do. what happens when they go into entropy? Again, it is a non-being state, but in that non-being state, they also are returning to the source. Boom. Going to reiterate this, and then I'm going to go through my notes for real because I've been kind of jumping around in a nonlinear sense. Continued encouragement to everyone, enroll in the class, access the teachable lessons, because I go through them very methodically, and sometimes depending upon how fragmented my mind and consciousness are in the moment here, I'm like, because I'm usually like this, I have so many things to say, blah, 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 blah. I want to say all these things at once. I try to hit the high notes and the most salient things. I know that sometimes I don't get everything. The recorded lessons, I think, are very methodical and well done, where I'm able to go through everything and get everything done everything said that needs to be said. So this shape, this chakra shape, has this convergence point that is the source and the destination. When I vibrate it in the higher dimensional state, and I make it like in that cross-section picture, and I give you this flying rainbow lasagna, what happens is when the singularity is up here, it's at energy. When it is down here, it's at entropy. Same singularity expressing different qualities when it is in different positions relative to its context. So basically you have to put this in a context. You have to put it in a room, the room that contains the room, which is hyperspace. So you put this in a hyperspace context and you're able to move it up and down. Or you could think of this as staying in one position, and that this singularity here flashes on and off. Like when I'm on, I'm energized. When I'm off, I'm entropy. And also it's not just like there, I know that I show this in symmetry. So you think like, oh, like there's one point, one, dole in that, one for you, one for me, two for you, two for me, one for energy, one for entropy, two for energy, two for entropy. But it's not like that, because you could have one for energy, 12 million for entropy. So there can be 12 million fragments that don't belong to be energized in being, but they belong to be in entropy in non-being. So what is the state of non-being, and how do I describe it? Making that bridge with objective and academic human science. It's called a bose-einstein condensate. I'm going to write it down for you. Hold on one second. I'm going to write it in the whiteboard. Record. Let me show you what I just wrote down during our brief little break. Bose-Einstein condensate. That's this right down here. That is a type of super dense matter. So when we talk about matter and energy as it is comprehended by science and academics right now, there's matter that we're familiar with, like I'm touching myself, I'm made of matter. There is that solid, liquid, that's my drink here, right? Then there's gas, that's the atmosphere where I'm waving my arm all around. Then there is plasma, which is a form of pure energy. If I had my lighter, I would flick a lighter and be like, here's a flame, it's made of plasma. Or look up in the sky and you'll see the sun, it's made of plasma, or shooting off plasma rays. But from matter and solidity here, there is actually another level that is even denser than the matter that we know right now. So right now, when we define something as matter and solid, it means that the molecules are moving at a particular rate. They're kind of like moving like this, but they kind of bounce off of each other and they move a little bit and they move a little bit. So even something like glass, you're like, those molecules aren't moving, they're stuck in place. They are not fully stuck in place. They're moving, but at a very, very, very slow rate. So glass actually is a solidified liquid. And this is just an interesting aside, but cathedral glass, like from over 500 or 800 or 1,000 years ago, a pane of glass that's been vertical for a very long amount of time, the glass molecules are being pulled down by gravity. And so the glass, instead of being a perfect uniform thickness like this, will be slightly thinner at the top and slightly wider at the bottom, because over the course of 1,000 years, those molecules are moving. So solid objects that we see in our environment do exhibit tiny amounts of molecular motion that just might be not visible to you within your time scale of your life, yet which are visible and valuable to know about. It's moving. Matter is moving, even if it's moving kind of slow. But the Bose-Einstein condensate is what happens when matter is completely brought down to no movement, which is what we would call freezing. So heat is a measurement of movement. Like if I take water and I put fire underneath it, the water gets hotter, it starts to boil. We do this all the time. I do this every morning making coffee. I drink decaf, don't worry. Because otherwise my head will explode. Because my brain is moving so fast. Makes the molecules of the water vibrate faster. And then eventually it comes out as steam, that because they're vibrating so fast, they don't even stay as a liquid. You got it? Molecular movement determines the state of matter. So in order to make a matter state go into the bose-einstein condensate, we take energy away from it. I'm going to make this super cold. This is me with the vacuum cleaner of heat energy. It's vacuuming away. I'm sinking away, taking away all of the heat energy. And the molecules, instead of moving really slow, but still kind of moving and bouncing against each other, they freeze. This is me frozen. I'm a frozen molecule. And what happens if this is one atom of a frozen molecule starts to smear on top of the next atom of a frozen molecule. And the next one smears on top and smears on top. Instead of many multiple individual molecules that are relating to each other and bouncing off of each other, they all, when they get to that point of total frozenness, which is known as 0 degrees Kelvin, they collapse, overlap, and begin to act as if they are one solidified atom. They form a new state of matter. That is the bose-einstein condensate. It is super condensed. Got it? Everything is condensed, but not in the sense of like, when Superman like took coal and he grabbed it in his hands like this and the diamonds came out, not like that. In the sense of everything, the overlappingness of everything. You're starting to get the commonalities here. So the initial super condensed matter that is the epicenter of the Big Bang, the initial 0th dimension, which is the clearinghouse for everything, all ideas, all timelines and possibilities and probabilities, infinity, and also the bose-einstein condensate, which is a total condensed level of all of these different molecules that would have been moving that now occupy the same space. They're not moving through time. We take all of their energy away from them and they're not moving through time. And what happens is they reach unity consciousness. So I know all of that was a lot of words to be able to describe this basic truism of what flying rainbow lasagna is. You have unity consciousness that is achieved through the totality of energy. 100% energy, infinite amount of energy. You're not only moving at light speed, you're moving at infinity speed. That's how fast your consciousness is moving. And then being complemented by those items that do not exist, that are not only not moving, they are not moving at any speed. Totality speed, as fast as your imagination can possibly imagine, faster than the speed of light. Fast. That's how fast you're moving. Like imagine your metabolism like getting faster, like you're running in place faster, double Dutch jump rope, faster, 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 blah. And then at a certain point, whoa, like you're just as fast as it's possible to be, you're infinitely fast. To complement that, there's infinitely slow or non-being or non-moving. And that is what entropy is. But there, again, it's not a journey like, oh, on Tuesday, I'll go half as fast and then I'll slow down a little bit more. And then at a certain point in 5 billion years, I'll make it to entropy. That is not what I'm talking about. So not like a slow pressing of the brakes of reality, but really an instantaneous sending to the state of non-being, of bose-einstein condensate, of personality characteristics and entities, and mostly it is unresolved emotional trauma. That is mostly what is troubling everyone in terms of suffering and consciousness right now. Mostly what you've got hanging around, because we jokingly call them, Pedro is here. A lovely hat tip to Pedro. P-O-O-T-I-S, those pesky occupiers of the interstices, what I sometimes lightheartedly refer to as the turds who refuse to flush, or something that is somehow circling the singularity event horizon, but can't actually go in. It's in some ways I'm being somewhat unkind because they are severely traumatized aspects of consciousness that have unresolved emotional experiences that are in profound levels of suffering. They are suffering, their existence is suffering. The definition of existence for them is suffering. To exist is to suffer for them because they're not supposed to exist. They're actually supposed to non-exist. And this might also seem like some silly mental game, like you're talking with someone like, like that thing is not supposed to exist. It's supposed to non-exist. Like, it's not like that. It actually is a very, very profound concept. So what I just shared with you here today, that is actually the highest application of the concept of what flying rainbow lasagna is and can be. When you exemplify it inside of yourself, like when you are doing your chakras are moving, you're turning yourself inside out, you're creating new reality patterns with your DNA, all of that is happening and is truthful. And all of that is part of the behavior that is within the overarching umbrella of this sense of sending some items to energy and sending some items to entropy. So within your own DNA structure, there are personality characteristics, physical characteristics, events, and event structures that you are like, those are non-desirable. I actually do not want to experience those. I'm going to send them to entropy. And what does that mean? It means you don't energize them. It means you don't put energy into them. You don't give food to them. You don't think about them. You don't wish them or experience them into being. You unbe them. They unbe. They do not be. They go into a non-experienced state. And that is your right inside of you. If you were like having the potential for expressing cancer or something like that, you don't have to be like, oh, like I'm going to have to make that happen. No, you don't have to make that happen. You can unmake that. Hold on, where did my drink go? You can unmake that. Every time I make a whole pitcher of water with electrolytes, because I know that I'm going to be running the marathon here. You are not expected to or beholden to fulfilling the potentials that exist within your DNA, especially in light of the genetic modifications that humans have undergone many, many, many times. So yeah, you've been modded many times. It means that it's not a pristine system. And some of the stuff that's inside of you, like that's not supposed to be there, that's not supposed to be there. Please do not energize that stuff that's not supposed to be there. Please only energize the aspects of self that are supposed to be there. That is what the journey to ascended mastery is all about. Going from being at an angle to being in total alignment with yourself as the expression of divinity that you actually are. And that means that there are some personality characteristics that go by the wayside. And then there are also some event structures that go by the wayside, and your DNA changes and transforms in its structure and in its behavior. And every single person that does the flying rainbow lasagna in that sense is leading the totality reality structure towards the realities we want to energize, and then the stuff we want to send to entropy as a collective. There are many characteristics, like I said, entities, organisms, organizations that belong in entropy, in non-being, and that this is moving beyond the concept of a reward punishment scenario, because it's not like saying like bad, I'm imagining like something bad, wrong, I shame you, then send you to hell forever. It's not like that. Again, not making fun of anybody's religion, but I'm making fun of that sense of like, that in unity consciousness, like, it's like, how are you going to get rid of stuff? Like, how are you going to discard these things? Everything exists. Everything is part of everything. What do you do with this stuff? So my flying rainbow lasagna is actually a very intentional solution to that puzzlement question that I perceived and experienced on a higher dimensional level, in seeing everybody as a book, in seeing reality structures as a holistic presence. If that's like that, and that's like that, and that's like that, then what am I going to do with all this stuff that's not supposed to exist? Flying rainbow lasagna, which basically means sending some of it to entropy. And then there are the questions of cosmic law, like you work within the boundaries of your own body, you're allowed to do that, and in doing that, you ripple outward into larger reality structures, and that your multiple coalescing reality structures cause a huge shift, which is shifting or writing the entire vessel of humanity and of this planet and of consciousness everywhere. So wait, I'm going to go back. I'm going to get through the notes. First, let me go over here to this question that was from half an hour ago, where Pedro asks, hi, Aurora, if someone hits the death membrane and the Pooties harvest energy, when you start again, do you start with all your energy or minus the harvested part? What an excellent question. You start with everything. That is big. So the only thing that those Pooties can do is make you a slow dissolve pill as opposed to a fast one. So they don't really get to keep stuff from you, but you know what they have done. So when you die, here's like, I'm moving at 10 miles per hour and hit the membrane of death, and I have 10 miles per hour of energy. And then let's say I could have instantaneously transformed and gone back to the beginning, but they're going to take that over millennia and be like 9 miles an hour for a million years, and then 8 miles an hour, just make you a slow dissolve pill. But all of that is different than what you're experiencing when you're alive. The real energy harvesting that happens from the membrane of death happens while you are alive. Ew, gross. I don't like this conversation at all. I'm just being, a little bit lighthearted. But yeah, this is like learning that you have worms inside of your belly that are eating you while you're alive. So why are we not at this angle to begin with? Why do we start out at a canted angle, and then through our own spiritual efforts of rectification and alignment with divinity? You saw my back go up there. We come into alignment as an ascended master. How come we don't just begin that way? And the answer is because these putis that are kind of like the sandbags that are making these chakras go all wildly wobbly, though that is what they're doing. They are siphoning energy off of you while you're alive. So you're trying to be in this perfectly aligned state, and they're like, oh, I'm going to mess with you here, bloop, bloop, bloop. Every single one of those gyrations through time is a loss of energy. That's what they're doing. That's how they are sustaining their empire. That is the empire on the membranes of death. That when you are alive, you eat apples and chickens and avocados, instead of being like going up that central membrane of death. They're like, oh, we're going to destabilize you with negativity thoughts and traumas and sufferings and all these other things, taking energy from your ideal timeline, bringing it onto the membrane of death, so that they can then have some of your energy. You live a less exalted experience than you would have, than you should have. Then get to the membrane of death, and then you learn this. Remember your homework assignment with the red X's? So you get your life review, and some of it is like, oh, I made a crappy choice there. I made a crappy choice there. But some of it is this. Something from the membrane of death, from the peanut gallery, influenced me, and that was not fair, and that was not okay. And it took energy from me, and then, blah, blah, blah happened as a causality factor. That's what I'm talking about, that these membrane of death occupants, to sustain themselves and their own really profound suffering, their existence or semi-existence is an existence of profound suffering, where they are constantly feeling like they don't have enough of whatever they need. They are constantly looking for ways to feed off of the living. And they want to eventually bring you to the membrane of death and then do a slow dissolve pill. But eventually you'll get everything back, but then get back to the beginning. But it just might be circuitous. It just might be like, if I took back, I'm back, I'm ready to get born. It only took like 15 billion years, but I'm ready to do it again. What should have been an instantaneous journey. Like, oh, math homework wrong. Slow, fast dissolve pill. Get back to the beginning. Get back in that game, kid, and try it again. Like your coach is getting you back in there. Yeah, no, you're not supposed to be on the sidelines for an extended amount of time. That's what hell or the astral realms or that whole idea of being tortured. That's my face when I think about torture, that the concept of being tortured between lives. There's no didactic purpose to that. Truthfully, please listen to me and imprint upon this truth of what I'm sharing with you, because you guys know that I bring a lot of truth to you here. Torture is not necessary, nor is it didactic, like it's not for teaching purposes. So the activities that happen in the interstices or the membranes between worlds, or what is loosely known as the astral realm or the etheric realm, that those places that are occupied by these extremely unhealed and malevolent presences, that they are, intentionally doing things to torture others so that they can extend their own presences. Like it's quite systematic and quite intentional. Eventually you do get everything back, but then here's what you don't get back. Like you don't get back interest on your investment. So if you had 10 units of energy and they tortured you over time and eventually you get 10 units of energy back, like you should actually get extras because you didn't have that energy during a certain amount of time. So that, I would say, gets resolved on a higher dimensional level, like on a level beyond this level of refinement, but you do eventually get everything back. So what is actually happening here is that they are fueling their empire with the sense of temporality. Like you're supposed to be someplace at a particular time, but you don't make it to that place. They stand in your way. They take that energy. They slow you down. They've been slowing you down. They've been slowing you down through your trajectory and making it a more distorted life trajectory, when what really should happen is they should be immediately slow. They should be infinitely slow. They should be non-existent. Because when you go to the membrane of death, there should not be an empire there or organizational culture that you should have to interact with, and beings and presences that have been there sustaining themselves for a long amount of time. And they should most definitely, huge emphasis here, they should not be interacting with the living, because they should be non-existent. So there should be no peanut gallery. So there should be no pooties. So there should be nothing that is inhibiting or tempting or trying to derail or harm a person. But we know that it's not a pristine system and that those things are there. But now that Flying Rainbow Lasagna exists, we have an incredible opportunity to actually resolve those things so that they are not there. Pedro also asks, can we eat light with the FRL? Yes, excellent question. Thank you for being in my class and being here today. So on a slightly different topic, how do you get light or eat light with the Flying Rainbow Lasagna? The first thing is you can imagine that there is no space between yourself and the sun, that the singularity that is at the center of you here, where you eat your light, and the singularity at the center of the sun, you could either envision that you've got a giant-sized Flying Rainbow Lasagna from here to the sun, back and forth. It's 93 million miles large. That's how large that bridge is. Somebody just woke up and came in here. We'll just have a brief break. Come on over. Come on over. Have a brief break. Come here. Say hi. Everybody on the video loves you. Come here. Say hi. This is what I'm talking about. You see? Oh, you can't see. She's right there. She's right there. There we go. All right. Chiki always likes to say hi, and she doesn't have her little chair here. Not 93 million miles away in terms of connecting to the sun and the singularity that is at the center of the sun, but zero distance away, and the capacity to connect directly to it. That's one thing, the folding of time, space, and consciousness. The other aspect in terms of bringing in more light to your life and to your world and to your body is if there is a blockade or an inhibitor, something that is coming between you and the sun. So here's me, here's the sun. There should be just beams of beautiful light coming inside of me, and they're coming all inside of me like this, but there's something there. It could be stuff that's sprayed in the atmosphere. It could be a giant mirror system. It could be any kind of opaque item. Something comes between you and the sun, or an artificial sun is there. That's when Flying Rainbow Lasagna really comes into effectiveness, jumping up and over, jumping beyond obstacles. And I do that a lot over this journey of being here as a were for the past 21 years, that I'm like, oh yeah, that should be direct line of sight with all that beautiful energy coming inside of me, no problem at all. Like, just like, that stuff just coming inside of me, but there seem to have been some inhibitors and things that are coming between me and that signal. So I do this every day. I jump out for groceries, jumping in and out for groceries, and the groceries are new thought structures and fresh energy from the perspective of the in-breath and out-breath that is happening on the larger cosmic scale. And I bring that energy into me. That's where I got all of my ideas and energy for my artwork and for the teachings that I did 10 years ago. And I have new teachings that are coming in that are called the Path of Light. And so I'm getting more of that, and I'll be able to, I have to make it coherent. So I'm be sharing it with you very soon. But yes, you oscillate over and past anything that might be considered an obstacle to direct line of sight communication with the sun. And Joanne has a question too. She says, so healing or traumas sends these thought entities to entropy. Yes, beautiful. Healing your individual and ancestral and collective traumas is what sends everything to entropy that is not supposed to be in existence. Fragmented consciousnesses, unresolved emotional experiences, and anything that's an entity or an organization that might be upheld by those entities. So think about that. We have had a planetary trauma. We have had a solar system trauma. I talk about this. What happened on Mars? What happened on the asteroid belt to make it the asteroid belt? What happened on Mercury? What happened on Venus? A lot of bad SHIT happened in this solar system. Sorry, I'm spilling it out because I'm just being casual with my language here. Many traumas happened in this solar system because it's not a lighthearted thing. When you kill a planet like that, it's bad stuff. And the invasion multiple millennia or a concurrent time ago of this planet and genetic modifications of occupants here. And then what's been going on in our recent memory within the past, lifespan of within the past lifetime of who you are as a human, blah, 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 all of that to say, yes, doing your own personal trauma healing work resolves those entities and sends them into a state of non-being. They really are a warble in time-space. And what that does is set the fabric of time-space right. So really what we're dealing with is a time-space consciousness fabric that has all sorts of convolutions in it that don't belong there, and that this is an ironing out of those convolutions so that you then have a perfectly clear, pristine system. She says, thank you, you have helped me immensely. I'm learning so much. I am so happy to help you. I'm so happy to give clarity to you, and thank you for being here in my class. Let me go through the notes because I have, roughly half an hour to be able to get through all of this. And I'm looking off over here to my notes. Perception has given rise to the understanding of the world as a place of duality. So you come here as an infant that's connected to universality or unity consciousness and have to kind of learn how your eyesight works, how thing versus thing works, and also creating your epidermis creates a sense of self versus the environment, and your ego story that they teach you, like your name is Sally, or your name is Trish, or your name is Chris, or your name is Charlie, or your name is Rose. I'm looking at everyone who's on my screen here. You have a name, and you're like, that's the story of me, and everything that's going on inside of my epidermis is me, and then everything that's outside of here is not me. So now I'm going to jump around again, because we need to talk about that time bubble that is expanding outward from the conception of the Big Bang. Big Bang, time bubble, moment now. And what that means is anything that's happening on the inside of the time bubble, like the present moment now into the past, can never speak with or interact with anything that is beyond that level of the time bubble that would be considered the potentialities of the future. And I use as my example a little ant. Like if there's a little ant walking on the inside of the expanding balloon bubble of time, here I'm the little ant, I'm walking along here, can never interact with or be friends with the little ant that is walking on the outside of the time bubble. That membrane becomes an impenetrable membrane. Where's my Mobius strip? Okay, so Mobius was a Swedish mathematician, almost, I think, 150 years ago at this point, who created this concept of the Mobius strip. This is made out of a piece of wood, but you can make it out of a piece of ribbon or paper or whatever you have. It is a strip that you make one twist and then rejoin the ends. And it becomes this quote unquote impossible shape where the outside becomes the inside and the inside becomes the outside. My finger is a magic finger. I'm going to place my magical finger on the outside of this shape. And I am tracing the outside, 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 outside. My dog is going to go crazy because that's a magic word for her. Outside, outside, oh, outside, inside, 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 inside. I have not lifted my magical finger up off of the surface there. Inside, 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 inside. And now I am back around again to the outside where now I clearly cannot anatomically put my finger there. But through this whole entire experience, I never lifted up my finger once. The inside becomes the outside and the outside becomes the inside. And you can also trace the edge of this shape as only having one edge. Like here I am on this edge, I'm tracing around this edge, and now I have not lifted up my finger. And now I'm on the opposite side of the structure, and I'm tracing the opposite side of the edge, and I've not lifted up my finger, but now I'm going to switch around to the other side too, if I could curl my finger around that much. The Mobius strip, an impossible shape, relates to, but it's not exactly the same as the flying rainbow lasagna, an impossible shape, where what we're doing is making the outside become the inside and the inside become the outside. So flying rainbow lasagna, resolving duality. We're doing several things with lasagna. You're vibrating your toroidal energy field. You're changing the behavior of your DNA. And what you're doing on an anthropocentric level is taking your inner world, inner, everything that we define as inner. What's your inner world? Like if you're going to write a journal or something like that, it would be your thoughts, your dreams, your feelings, hopes, desires, passions, all the stuff that you can't weigh on a scale. It's all the stuff that science really doesn't feel that comfortable touching with a 10-foot long pole. It's all the stuff that, like, you can't say it's 12 inches long, or it's, 12 meters high, or that it weighs a kilogram or anything like that. Like, how much does your joy weigh? How much does your anger weigh? Like, you can't measure it or weigh it like that. Or how much is your love? Or how much is your, again, passion or desire? Or how much is your dream? It's very, very difficult to put those levels of measurement on it. Yet all of those things exist. Let's contrast that with the outer world. The outer world is easy. Like, how many feet long is that wall? That's easy. Grab a tape measure and do it. How long is my hair? That's easy. How big is a thing? How much does a thing weigh? All this stuff out here, we've gotten very, very comfortable with measuring and acknowledging. And so there has been, for many, many times in human history, a diminishment of the value of the inner world. Be like, that's just your thoughts and dreams and imagination. It's very, very stupid. They're there, dear. Like, you know what I'm talking about? I'm being facetious when I say that. The sense of, Marie, thank you for being here, and please catch the rest in the archive. And thank you for being in our class. Diminishment of the inner realm of imagination, impractical. How impractical? Get your head out of the clouds. Stop imagining things and thinking about things and feeling passionately about things, and go dig a ditch, or whatever, grow some strawberries. All of these things, it's just the lack of practicality. But I'm really telling you, and quantum science starts to begin making this bridge, the sense that our outer reality emanates from the inner experience, that the outer reality is not arbitrary, and it's not merely deterministic, as many people presume that it is. It is actually a very innately connected to your inner state reality structure. So quantum observership is something that begins to be explored and recognized and acknowledged in the world of quantum science, which was or quantum physics, from like the early 1900s, that people started to shift their viewpoint away from strict objective materialism and towards the sense of observership, which is an inner state affecting the outer world of hard-edged material objects, events, and other people. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is an activity that when you perform this activity or embodiment, what you're doing is taking your inner world and manifesting it into your outer experience, just like the Mobius strip, which then feeds back into your inner world, which you then manifest back into your outer experience. And it becomes like a figure eight, a seamless loop between these two levels of experience. So these are different cosmology stories. The old cosmology stories, like the wall is just the wall, and that guy over there is just that guy over there, and they both have nothing to do with me. Like, my thoughts and ideas are stupid, and my imagination means nothing. Like, this is the old paradigm, right? The new paradigm is, well, that wall is there because I'm thinking about it, looking at it, and observing it, and so are all of you on the video. And that guy over there is not just that guy over there. That guy over there is actually a fractal emanation of my own consciousness of divine presence coming from a different vector or direction in time, and that we're interacting with each other right now through observership and having some new amazing learning experience happen as a result of that. And also, new paradigm says, if I look around and I see stuff in the world that I don't like that much, or that upsets me or is diminishing me, it is somehow directly related to my internal state. So I tell people this all the time, like, if your house is messy or if you're moving or whatever, the internal state is reflected in the external reality. Seriously, if you're feeling angry, upset, anxious, depressed, whatever it is, and you have a sink full of dirty dishes and unfolded laundry and everything is everywhere, and the dirty socks are on the floor, clean up your house. Clean up the outside, and it starts to make the inside feel better. And also, when the inside feels better, then you also find that your outer circumstances become more organized and more pristine. And also when you're moving, you're not just moving like from one house or apartment to the next house or apartment. Like, your inner state is changing. The inside reflects the outside. And for a little while, you're like, how? I'm in a state of chaos. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where anything is. Then you get to your new state and you're like, now I'm in my new state. My inside reflects my outside. And dreams. dreams as they are in a pristine world, which sometimes dreams now are influenced by technology or other things like that. But in an ideal world, your dreams are the internal reality generation mechanism that you're doing when you're kind of like not paying attention to anything that's out here. You're just completely in your own intimate inner world of dreaming, which is yourself as a presence and God consciousness, or the vibrating field of potentiality that you are integrating with, or interchanging with and being a part of, because you create seeds of potential that then this vibrating field brings into reality. So the dream space is where that happens. And when you're an artist, artists need to have ideas. That when you're an artist, visual or auditory or whatever it is that you do, everything starts with an idea. Every single one of my paintings started with an idea. And then that idea became manifested into a thing, all right? So, or anything, if you build anything, if you build, like these tables are a perfect example. The tables began as a concept in my mind. Then I went out and found the reclaimed wood. Then I asked a friend to help me build the tables. We used hardware and tools to put the tables together. Then I had tables, but it all started from a conception that was with the divine presence. Myself and myself as God conceived of a bunch of tables. We thought of them. I thought of them. And then I was like, I got to get some wood. And then I found the thing that I needed right next to a dumpster. And then I got the other stuff that I needed. So it is a fun adventure when you look at reality in that way, instead of the flyer's mind from Castaneda. That's like, oh, I have a need. I need tables. I need tables. I need to have money. I need to have this. I need to have that. And the sense of like, how am I ever going to get all of my needs filled and everything that I need? I'm not making fun of you, because needs are very real, and we really do need things like food and shelter and tables. When you look at life as a fun adventure where you are in a co-creative partnership and you're externalizing your inner dream, you're like, I'm going to dream of what I need. I'm going to imagine what I need. I'm going to think of what I need. And then I'm going to go around in my daily outside externalized presence, like Mobius strip. I'm going to find it out there. And then I'm not going to say like, oh, it's too expensive. I can't get it. My shoulders go down. I'm going to be like, that's stuff that I was just thinking of. I'm going to have to get it somehow. And then you find the fun adventure of being able to get it and then have it and then use it. And then on the tables, I make paintings. And then it continues to unfold. It's a never ending a fun adventure of these items. Because yes, you will have an endless series of needs and requirements. That's a fun, positive thing. It's like saying, I'm hungry for the next thing. Like, I already had lunch, but I'm hungry for the next thing. That's actually very positive. You have grown and you need more stuff in order to fuel your journey through reality. And then the getting of the stuff is a fun adventure. So that's what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is on the level of the experiencer. And then if you take that and exponentially magnify it, you get the entire planet structure doing that. So you get an entirely redefined social dynamic, economic dynamic. What are resources? Who gets them? How do we use them? How much do you get? How much money do you get? Where do resources come from? Why do they go to some people and not to other people? And how do we use them as a collective? I wanted to say, like, because how you use them as an individual is different than how you use them as a collective. Like, you might want to be like, we've got $5 million, let's build a giant bridge. We might be like, we've got $5 million, let's waste it on bureaucracy. Like, of course, like, you want to get good value for your money of the things that you're actually making with the money that is part of the collective. So all of that is the moment that we are poised within or upon in terms of restructuring our reality. That's fun. That's actually really fun and really good. You want to change and shift the previous outgoing paradigm that was one of huge suffering, limitations, and a game of musical chairs where someone's always going to be left without a chair to sit on, into a much better structured reality in terms of where you get your resources, how you use them, and how it affects your entire planet. Because you're not just little ants like on the surface of the planet. You are intimately connected with the planet herself, her dream, or the living dream of the planet, what the planet wants in terms of manifesting idea structures and reality structures, and for you as an inhabitant. I'll get to your questions. Let me keep going a little bit further. So inside versus outside, that's one of the hugest dualistic oppositions that we are taught. And then busting past that, we're using quantum observership as some self-teaching to be able to comprehend going past that. And then what I offer in terms of Flying Rainbow Lasagna to be able to share. Oh yeah, Peter's got a great question there. and I'll speak to it right now, Flying Rainbow Lasagna, to be able to more effectively, positively paint a structure of reality with your mind. Pedro says, is the tilt of Earth part of the trauma? If we rectify it, would Earth tilt decrease? I'm standing up and cheering. The answer is yes. Earth is tilted at roughly 26 degrees. This gives us the 4 seasons, known colloquially winter, spring, summer, fall, the time of death, the time of rebirth, the time of sustenance, high summer, and then the time of the harvest, back to the time of death, endless cycles of nature. And everyone looks around at this and is like, endless cycles of nature. Born, sustain, die, born, sustain, die, and thinks that that is just part of who you are and what is baked into your reality structure as a human. I'm going to get born, I'm going to live, I'm going to die, I'm going to do the whole thing over again. And that is truthful in the system that you live within right now, but it is not a truism that goes across every layer of reality, because we come from a layer of reality where we were all light eaters and nothing had to die in order for you to be sustained. Big, big, big. That's why I'm making that face to emphasize that. Big. You ate light directly from the sun while in rapport or in conjunction with the sun. You didn't eat it indirectly through another organism that died. Like, I love all of the avocados and chickens that I eat. They died for me so that I could actually have sustenance inside of me. And I'm in gratitude. Like, when I eat, I'm literally in gratitude to those organisms. Their lives were cut short so that my life could be sustained. And that seems part of the fairness or unfairness of what we're experiencing. But when I go back to what I'm familiar with and where I come from on the stellar network, nothing has to die in order for me to be sustained. And so that's moving beyond this paradigm where everything is not pristine. There's been genetic modifications, and then there's been the guys that live on the interstices that are basically like parasites feeding off of you. So when you have parasites in your tummy, ew, gross. It's like you eat apples and chickens and they're like, apples and chickens, hooray, we're going to eat it, and not give any of it to you. That's the problem. Like, that's what tapeworms do. So if you have a tapeworm, you get very skinny, your tapeworms get very, very fat. Ew, gross. I'm being facetious here, but still. Yeah, so if you have occupiers of the interstices and you're eating and they are siphoning the joy off of your life and out of your food, they're getting the energy you're feeling. You're living in energetic poverty because they are getting all of the energy that is actually meant for you. Or if something is encapsulating your planet and feeding off of the ascension energies that are supposed to be coming to your planet for your own education and uplift, they're getting high off of the ascension energies. You're supposed to be being elevated by those energies, but instead everyone is down here in the mire of confusion. What the heck is going on? I don't know, because those energies have not gotten to you effectively. So yes, in the rectification event that is ongoing, Earth will no longer have its tilt. Everything will be recontextualized. You will not have the seasons as you presently know them. Kind of mind-blowing, I know, but in a positive way, not in a way that's going to make everything die. Like, you're like, but wait, trees rely, yes, they rely upon the seasons. Trees are deciduous. They go into a state of dormancy. Plants have created a whole entire strategy of seeds. Seeds exist like little tiny time capsules. Like, I'm going to put myself to sleep. I'm going to put myself to sleep in a little seed pod that contains millions of copies of me, like a poppy seed or whatever, millions of tiny copies of me. And they're all going to go into a state of asleep or dormancy. Then the winter time, the death time will come. Then when springtime, everybody's going to come awake again, and I'm going to pop out of the ground and be alive again because I'm coming out of my time capsule. That's a survival technique that has evolved or developed for plants to be able to deal with the world of seasons where things go in these cycles, but it is completely different. It was very different in the time before death was invented. How did plants behave? How did animals behave? You don't have to have endless successive generations in order to sustain yourself because you don't die. Everything is different in that time that we are not returning to, but we are recreating or realigning a new version of that time. So that's a big discussion, but just know that everything changes and shifts in the most amazing way. Not in the sense of loss. You're not going to be like, oh, but I like autumn and the colorful leaves. I know that you do, but you will not miss death. when you have this transcendent experience beyond death. Rose says, as you're flying the lasagna from inner to outer, should I be repeating affirmations of desired outcomes? The answer is you do not have to use your intellect when you're in that level of flying or oscillating in a quantum indeterminate time space known as flying rainbow lasagna. In your ego state, you're like, okay, like I'm hungry, I want some ice cream, and I'm also gonna want stuffed animal. I'm thinking of all like silly things, and an umbrella. Those are the things that I need. And then when you go into flying rainbow lasagna, you don't have to be like ice cream, stuffed animal, umbrella, ice cream, stuffed animal, umbrella. You don't have to do that. Those desires exist as the basic form inside of you and of what you desire. And they exist as part of your ego desires, egocentric desires, which are appropriate because everybody wants to have ice cream and an umbrella. And also when you vibrate into your exalted state, which sees the entire viewpoint of time, from the birth of time to the end of time, laid out on a table with every single possibility and probability exemplified there. And what you really want is what is right for every moment on that table. So although you want the stuff that's right for you, you're like, well, I want ice cream, but I don't want to mess up that part over there. And I don't want to mess up that part over there. And I want that guy over there not to get hit by a Mack truck. And I want that guy to be much improved. And so all of this is like the world's most giant Rubik's Cube or puzzle, where what you're trying to do is like, okay, I'm going to shift reality. Oh no, like when you're doing Rubik's Cube, like that face was perfect, but now I shifted it and like, oh, now it's not perfect anymore. But that's part of the problem and the challenge of that's part of the journey of problem solving and challenge facing when you're doing that. So you're like, oh, I shifted reality, but now that part is wrong. Erase it away. Now we're going to shift reality like this. Oh, now this part is wrong. Erase that away. And what you end up doing is, again, flying rainbow lasagna is a time crystal that is built over many, many, many multiple sessions of dancing, just like you paint an oil painting with many, many translucent glazes. That can take 20 years to paint a masterpiece, okay? And you're not expected to paint it all at one time. So it is incremental shifting of reality, and you are most responsible for the reality aspects that are about your body where you live, and the stuff that's within your personal level of empowerment, what you eat, what you experience, where you live and where you go, what you do with your own body. And then radiating outward from there, secondarily, you are responsible for and responsible to the collective. This is one of the ongoing themes of my class: responsibility to self versus responsibility to the collective or the community, but not only in a dualistic fashion, but just balancing out these two things. Because if I were to fly rainbow lasagna from a purely self-centered level, I could be like, all money for me, and then I can have a golden palace and I'll have everything, but then everybody else will be starving outside of there, and then that's not an ideal time space. And that's why I've said to people, as I've been teaching here for many, many years, I'm like, how come I don't have a golden toilet seat? Like, I don't know, there's some, maybe it's Trump or whatever, somebody's got a golden toilet seat out there. How come I don't have that? And the answer is, like, I haven't imagined that for myself, because when I really do this vibrating, oscillating maneuver, I'm in a unity consciousness headspace that really wants something more than just problem solving or conveniences for me. I really want something even bigger. Like, my ask is even bigger than a golden palace. I want the entire world to be a golden palace, and not only this planet, but this entire solar system, this entire galaxy, and all light everywhere. My ask is a huge ask. What I'm asking for is for all time, all timelines, all dimensions, all parallel realities to be rectified, so that everything that is not supposed to be in existence goes into non-existence. Everything that is supposed to exist exists and has the energy that was earmarked or specified for that organism or that experience. That's actually a big thing to ask for, and it's a big job, and it's a big journey that I'm on, and it is freedom. Because if you live in real freedom, you're like, well, I can oscillate anywhere I want in the galaxy, except not over there, because over there stinks, and not over there, because they're going to imprison you, and not over there, because they're going to rape you, and not over there, because they're going to do this bad thing to you. So real freedom is about having a beautiful, pristine system everywhere, where everything has been resolved in every single dimension. And where you are free to just be like, I am going to swim, walk, or fly in whatever direction I want to, being guided by God and knowing that I'm going to have the most magical and expansive adventure. That's what I really want. Again, it's costs more or is more precious and valuable. That's the treasure. That is the treasure of the world. Much, much more so than just having the treasure that is something that is materialistic that you can lock up in a vault here, like in your safety deposit box, and keep it safe. So when you do your FRL, you put everything into the soup. You put in like some carrots and some potatoes and some parsley. Those are all of your earthly desires. And then when you vibrate into your unity consciousness desires, you also put in a ton of vegetables and broth. That is what you really want from that perspective, from that galaxy-wide pure light level of perspective. And then you're really doing the dance in a balance of both things, because you know something, you don't want to do one at the expense of the other. You're like, oh great, like I danced for the galaxy and I improved life for, you know, pure light and dimensionality incrementally, but then like you get out of your dance and you're like, the refrigerator is empty, there's no chickens and no apples and no avocados to eat. Then I would be in suffering if I did that. So you balance out both of these states in the knowing that you will receive what you need in this embodiment state, and also that you are creating the totality structure that is more worthwhile and treasured than any individual item that you could receive. Cherries, thank you for being here, says, how much do you rely on sacred text or literature? Do you have any that you recommend as being resonant with your message? Everything that I share with you guys comes to me directly from my inner knowing here. None of it comes to me from the stuff that's already written in this world, but sometimes I find confirmation from the things that are written in this world. But I usually don't read them because I think you can get confused. Not you. It can be confusing to me. It can be confusing to others. There's some nourishment, nutrition, but then there's also some poop in all of those things. There's some filler or cellulose fiber, something that's not edible and sustainable to you. And that's just part of the basic nature of verbalization, language, and information being passed in a way that is less than telepathic. When you pass information in a telepathic way, it is directly mind to mind, and it's 100% light with no filler. That's how you really want to learn. So yeah, I don't have anything that I feel like I get a lot of information from, but I get good confirmation from. I was just talking with someone the other day about the work of Jose Arguelles, Arguelles, and he did a lot of work on resolving the calendar, and also wrote this book about Book of the Cube, and some of that information gave me a lot of confirmation. I'm like, that's exactly what I know. That's exactly what I know. So I know that guy was tuned in, but also like I really don't ingest from others. But it's really good and important to do that level of acknowledgement. Like I'm not the only clear voice that is here. There are many clear voices, but just I don't mostly tune in on them, because mostly I'm tuning in on this because that's my job. But yeah, so there are some valued voices, and I do get a lot of inspiration from other artists, but not in the sense of cosmic patterns, but inspiration from the way that they painted or how they lived their life or how they approached projects. So I certainly do learn, and I value very much contributions from other visual and auditory artists. But in terms of information, like I'm connected to the great teacher, and I learn from the great teacher inside. Pedro says, recently I learned about Jacobo Grinsberg. He studied about consciousness and shamanism and disappeared mysteriously. I know very little about his work, but looks interesting. Do you know his work? I don't know his work, okay? But thank you for bringing that to our attention. And Pedro also says, do you need some requisites before doing the Merkaba, meditation, and FRL? Yes, definitely. So creating the love tone is a prerequisite for all of this type of work. And Merkaba, so meditation is one way of gaining more energy and creating more of the love tone. Flying Rainbow Lasagna, all of these activities run on love. So love is frictionless divine consciousness flowing through every level of your being. And in large part, that means going into nonverbal states, just because of the nature of what words are. They tend to slow us down and slow down the energy metabolism. So going into nonverbal mental states is a very important activity to be able to do for self-cultivation. And also it's really important that you have the shields up so that in your inner silence, you don't have a bunch of other things coming inside and be like, oh, hi, like I see your mind is not occupied right now. I'm just going to come on in here and say and do whatever I want. So big aspects of Flying Rainbow Lasagne, which I'll teach later in the semester in terms of encryption and making sure that nothing else is coming into your creative process or intervening or injecting itself between yourself and your own God presence, which is what you should be doing. So Merkaba is protective energy field and protective energy shield. I think like that is effective and appropriate for anyone, beginners included. And even if you cannot envision all of the moving shapes of the polygon, envisioning like a bubble of light or an egg of light around yourself that says only information and experiences of the quality of love and above may come inside of this energy. It's energetic boundaries. Energy boundary work is hugely important and very, very good to begin cultivating on. So, and with Flying Rainbow Lasagne, I teach this to everyone, like, you're worth it, you're worthy, you're allowed to do all of these things. People go into huge levels of questioning their worth and questioning whether God would allow them to rewrite the script of reality, whether they're allowed to change their DNA, whether they're allowed to make these contributions. I have a whole treatise on this that is about what you are and aren't allowed to do and what is encouraged and what is the appropriate approach. But basically, you're in existence because you passed the audition. You have some potential, like the chomping cigar guy. Hey, kid, you got potential. But I'm trying not to be too lighthearted right now. You have an enormous amount of potential that is exemplified just by the fact that you're here as a biological entity. And the process of Flying Rainbow Lasagneing is a process of learning more about yourself. You'll get better at it as you do it, which is just like playing music. So I don't want anyone to be like, that's it, like I'm not even good enough to pick up the guitar. Like, you're good enough to pick up the guitar. It's why you were born. It's why you are here. And your own body and your own life is your canvas and is your masterpiece. And it is totally appropriate for you to be painting and doing that on your canvas and on your masterpiece. And all of the things that I teach about are a values system, so that you are exemplifying the proper values in the things that you're doing. Just hugging my dog down here. Again, not just creating something out of self-service that you feel is convenient to you, but really coming from the direction of unity consciousness. So all of these things, they do require expertise, and you don't start off on an advanced level. Like, you should start off at the beginner level, but you're good enough to be the beginner. It's why you're here. Truly, truly. So let me just go through a little bit more of my notes here. Got the initial leap of consciousness from the zeroth dimension into existence, and the singularity or the zeroth dimension, making that leap and expanding, similar to the conception that creates new life, like sperm meets egg, a magical or miraculous event. I talked to you already about the anatomy of the physical eye and the boundaries that we make in terms of my face versus my hair versus the wall that is behind us, and the inside versus the outside. Duality, the expanding bubble of time, and the contrasting viewpoint of being embedded in time versus seeing the whole entire spectrum of movements all at once. Persistence of vision is the ocular phenomenon. That is how we have movies and film strips, where each static frame of reality is tied together through our own system of perception, through our own, you are the magic. So you're being presented with flashes of static images. And, you know, those old pictures look herky-jerky, like the person isn't moving smoothly. It's up to you. You add the integument that makes it appear as if something is moving smoothly. Same thing with time. You're moving through time at one Planck length per Planck length. All right, I don't have a language for that. But you are moving through time that is actually a series of static frozen moments or movements. And it is actually the circulating rotating aspect of your chakras that are acting as zoetropes or wheels of life. creating a smooth, I'm using the word integument, integrated sense of linearity of the events that are going on. So again, you are really the magic or the miracle or the supernatural aspect in observership of tying together these discrete reality events into something that has a larger coherence. And you begin with the sense of a linear first, second, third causality, like beginning, middle, end. And that's also how comprehending the time structure, like the beginning of the Big Bang, the exhalation into the moment now, and then eventually like the rectification, everything coming back together. But that's just the primary way of the most simplified way of perceiving that then does become changed in greater complexity as you achieve more levels of unity consciousness. Higher dimension vision, parallel realities that branch off due to tiny little changes in the decision-making process, and every single timeline or toothpick in my timeline vortex diagram that I share with everyone all the time is a movie or a parallel version of reality, and you are the end result. This I need to read. You run the entire spectrum of experience, from axe murderer to avatar of goodness. That's the journey of becoming an ascended master, that you encompass all of these different parallel realities, and that all of them are colors or layers of the masterpiece painting that is who and what you are as God, and that each one of them has a necessity, non-arbitrary nature in adding up to the final equation of you, like you equal God, you equals God. All right. I'm reading this again. All of the supportive structure adds up to reality in the same way that Roy G. Biv adds up to white light. And this also gives us a different paradigm in terms of assessing whether behavior is worthy of punishment or reward or pain or pleasure or suffering, or what egocentric deity would say about your behavior. The question is not, is it good or bad? Good or bad on a moralism sense. Like what is good in one culture is bad in another culture. There's a huge level of cultural relevance in these things. These are not empirical, universal assessments that are made, and largely inhuman, both social punishments and rewards, and also human religions. You got it? So what is perfectly socially acceptable here is punished in this country over here. This religion punishes this religion applauds this. And that the real question when we're asking from a viewpoint of unity consciousness is, does an activity or a behavior or an event bring something or someone towards soul evolution? It's not this dualistic sense of right versus wrong. It's the sense of, does something lead towards coherence and longevity? That's your soul evolution. It helps you to stick together as waveforms, coherence. It helps you to keep moving through time as longevity. That's it. That's the same thing in your body. It's not like, people ask all these questions about food, like, is it right to eat chickens? Is it right to eat avocados? Is it right to drink this? Is it wrong to drink this? The answer is not right or wrong moralism paradigms that are very clear cut like that. The answer is, does it move you towards longevity and coherence? Does it make you an ascended master, or does it bring you towards the membrane of death? That's the question in your own individual life. Does it make you go more towards eternal life, or does it make you go more towards death? And no offense, but there's some things that are teachings that are religious teachings that bring you more towards death. Like if you're like, I'm going to have to die in order to go to heaven, that is a religious teaching that brings you more towards death. And what I really want is for you to make your decisions and your choices and your expectations in reality based on what will bring you towards eternal life. All right. And then, let me hold on one moment while I scroll. I also just might need to take care of my dog. Hold on one moment. Go for 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to take care of my dog. Yeah, because I got through almost all of these notes that are part of part 2. So part 1 is about the duality of your perception and of being submerged in linear time and getting you into the sense of what it would be like if you jumped off of the surface of time and saw all time as now. Come on over here. This is what I'm talking about. She needs to come inside over here. No, she doesn't want to. We've been recording for a little while, and I can tell she needs W-A-L-K. That's why I said she might go crazy if I keep saying that word outside over and over again. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for being in the class. It says the lasagna is very tasty. The flying rainbow lasagna as a seamless continuum between two realms, a blending of the inner and the outer reality. And also, I spoke extensively at length, the bringing of certain energy patterns and characteristics to energy, and the sending of certain things to entropy. And when you send something to entropy, it's not like I wave my magic wand, I send you to entropy. It's more of a sense of reclaiming energy and attention away from that thing. It's kind of like, no, I'm not going to pay you. I'm not going to buy you. I'm not going to get from you. I'm going to take all of that stuff and bring it back to me and keep it with me. So it really more is a sense of retention or retaining your true energy and only choosing to spend or exert that energy onto reality structures and characteristics that you want to extend it onto. Yes, you are indeed manifesting your outer reality based upon your inner world of pure energy. And when you do flying rainbow lasagna, your life becomes a seamless continuum of what you are thinking about and what you are experiencing. What ends up happening is you have more synchronicities, more causality with your inner thoughts and your outer manifestations. And then the singularity as an example of God discovering God's self. And that God is discovering it can be in two places at the same time, which is similar to that sense of the initial zeroth dimension thinking, what would happen if a part of me wasn't with me here, but was instead over here? So this is that same level of cognitive leap, but just a different flavor. So I'll do a few more questions. Rose says, got it. Pedro says, thank you. Pedro says, love lasagna. Thank you very much, everyone. I do want to open the floor to questions or comments because I don't want to end so abruptly, but I do want to take care of my DOG. Come on over here. Come on over here. She's right over here. Any other questions or comments or anything that I need to speak to, or comments and questions can always go in the comment section of YouTube. And I'll also will give you an opportunity after I end the recording for anyone that has anything that they really need to say before I take care of Miss Cheeky over here. I think I need to end the recording. Oh, she asked, Pedro asked, is intuition part of the seventh chakra? Insight is intuition. Unspoken, non-verbalized knowing is part of this, which is connected to this, but is also a little bit connected to this. So this is orange guts down here. You feel it in your guts. This is insight, which is pure knowing, but your pure knowing must be guided by God. So it's actually a chord that is made of 3 notes. Insight is made of your crown, which is violet, plus your brow, which is dark blue, plus your orange, which is your feeling emotional state. Joanne says, love to Cheeky. Cheeky, you got lots of, let's show the world. Cheeky, let's show the world. You got lots of people who love you right here. She's been very well behaved for our whole afternoon. And now we are going to reward her with a nice little walk. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Cheeky sends much love to you, and I do too. Profound gratitude. Thank you.